Join your host, Maddie Roach, as she brings you into a community of fee-only financial advisors who are successfully building profitable businesses that serve the next generation of clients. Learn from innovative advisors whose unique stories will inspire you to dream big and take action on your goals. Are you ready to live your best life and help your clients live theirs? Then you're in the right place.
Hello, and welcome to XYPN Radio. I'm Maddie Roach, your host. I'm excited to have 4 XYPN members and business owners on the show with me today. Becky Meats, Arnold, Molly Lauder, and Adrienne Ross were introduced to each other during their XYPN Launcher program in 2019 and have met consistently every week since then as a mastermind group. Today on the show, we dig into what makes this group work, from the framework they use to the attitudes they employ, and how they ensure the meetings and groups are helpful to each of them. We discuss imposter syndrome, pivotal points in their group history, and how being part of a group of folks at the same level is helpful, not competitive. You'll hear them share stories of how the group has been a lifeline, literally, and how they couldn't imagine running solo shops without the support of a group like this. Although they stay on mute while each other speak, the laughter and energy in this group is contagious and, quite frankly, motivating. If you're not yet part of a study group or a mastermind group or a Fridays Lady group, as this group calls themselves, or worry about what it may be like to run a firm on your own, this episode's going to be for you. Avocado toast, selfies, a mountain of student loan debt. Gen Y is anything but traditional, and with over 75 million people, it's a population you don't want to ignore. Learn more about how to serve this unique population in our guide called Attract and Profitably Serve Millennial Clients in Your RIA. Discover 3 key ways to tap into the millennial market and 6 things that they want from their financial advisor. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/millennials for your free copy. You can find any of the resources we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/309. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's a community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Becky, Bonnie, Molly, and Adrienne. Good morning. Welcome to XYPN Radio. Bonnie, Becky, Adrienne, and Molly. So glad to have you.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hi.
Wonderful. We are talking about one of my favorite topics today, and that is the power of a mastermind group or study group, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But ultimately, you 4 ladies are on this podcast today because you have created something really special and meaningful and, quite frankly, effective in your businesses by joining together as friends and colleagues in a real frameworked study group environment. And I'm interested to hear kind of over the next hour or so, your insight into how that all is going. So let's start first and foremost with some intros and get a little familiar with who our guests are today. Becky, I'll start with you. Would you mind just giving us a quick intro of who you are, what you built, and maybe just a general sense of who you serve and how many clients you're working with?
All right. My name is Becky Meats, and my firm name is REM Financial Planning. I'm out in Vancouver, Washington, and I serve women dreaming of retirement and ready to start planning for it. I think I'm somewhere around 5 to 6 clients, so I'm kind of working on building it.
Absolutely. Awesome. Congrats, Becky. That's wonderful. Molly, how about you?
Hello, my name is Molly Lauder. My firm is Laughter Financial. I'm actually in the Dallas, Texas area. And I have, I want to start with women as my niche, but that's not really a niche. So I kind of have 2 different niches or niches. And that is young women just getting started. They've got great careers, but they don't know where they should be saving. And they're kind of doing some things, but don't know if they're doing the right things. And then the other side of the niche, I guess, is women that maybe have lost a spouse or lost a loved one and are new to learning what all this financial stuff is. And let's see, I've got about 16 clients at this point. So we all started about the same time in May of 2019, and we're all just building, but I've got kind of a range of sizes. And I think that's actually really fun.
Totally. Wonderful. Congrats, Molly. Glad to have you on.
Thanks.
Bonnie, how about you? What have you built?
Hi, I'm Bonnie Arnold. I'm in the Portland, Oregon area. I have Anya Financial Planning is my RIA. Like everyone else in this mastermind group, I started about 2 years ago. I think we all joined the Launcher group about May 2019, but all of us got registered right around July and August of that year. So we're not quite 2 years, but getting close. I have about 20 to 25 clients, depending on whether you're talking about AUM or financial planning. I do both. And it's been a blast. I love it. And I love XYPN and I love this mastermind group.
Awesome. Love that energy, Bonnie. Thank you. And congrats on the growth. These are the toughest years, I must say. I haven't lived them, but I certainly have heard many stories, and congratulations on making it nearly to your 2-year mark. Adrienne, how about you?
Good morning. So I have Clear Insight Financial Planning in Spokane, Washington, and have kind of a barbell niche, kind of like Molly, in the fact that I have some clients that are kind of younger and getting started, and I created a financial foundations program to help them. So I have clients on that end of things and focus more heavily on education and just helping them get that good start. And then I have some clients that are military families in transition or just other people that are going through pretty major life changes.
Love it.
And I would say I probably have around 30 to 35 clients. It depends on if you count the projects or not. So, it's always interesting on how you're counting your client base.
Totally. Wonderful, Adrienne. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bonnie?
I forgot to mention my niche. It's great. It's therapists, actually, mental health practitioners in private practice. And
Love
it's
that.
Wonderful. They are so grateful for the help. And it's been a great niche for me. So
I love the diversity of the group. I'm interested, though, how do you refer to yourselves? Are we talking about a mastermind group? Are we talking about a study group? Are you guys just friends? Molly, how do you refer to what you guys have built?
I call this group my lady group. So I don't know if that is what everybody else says. We have many names. I don't even remember. Is it May-2-2019, y'all? I can't remember the name but we don't have an official name. I refer to us as the lady group, but.
Wonderful. Becky, how do you refer to it?
My Friday ladies. Yeah.
Friday ladies. Okay, wonderful. So who wants to walk me through kind of what your structure is? At XYPN, we do help facilitate these study groups. And again, I use the term study group. It can be mastermind group or lady group or any of those things. But really, we try to intentionally bring people together so that you can have some synergy around a consistent meeting and a framework with that. Bonnie, would you mind kind of talking us through what framework, if any, you have in terms of how you meet, what the regularity is, how long, things like that?
we meet every Friday, and on West Coast time, it's noon to 1:30, depending. And sometimes we go longer if we're like very involved. Molly's on Central time, so she's a couple hours ahead. So XYPN offered us a framework at the beginning, like these are some, 2 different ways that you could run your meetings. And we tried in the beginning to follow that framework, but it fell apart pretty quickly because, maybe it's my fault. I don't know, because I don't like structure that much. So I think I'm the least structured of any of the people in this group. And so I think it served us well, though. We just kind of show up with whatever we're working on, whatever we need help with. And sometimes it's financial planning and sometimes it's personal issues. We are all very close and talk about all of the things that we're going through. We also have a group text where we occasionally I'll get a text, we'll get a text message, anybody available? And then someone will call whoever's requested assistance for, everything from I'm feeling imposter syndrome to I'm getting too many emails from a client to I'm sure there's many other examples, or how do I access TD Ameritrade so that my clients can make deposits themselves. Technical support, ADV help, personal issues, it runs the complete gamut. And I feel like we've all really been there for each other for whatever is needed at any given moment.
I love that so much. I'd love to know about how you all met. It does sound like you met through kind of the launcher program that XYPN puts together. But Adrienne, I'd be interested in kind of in your take and the evolution of this. How did it all come together?
It really was just coming together in the launcher group. Originally, I think we had 5 people in our group. A couple dropped out early on. And so briefly, it was sort of Bonnie, Becky, and I. And then Bonnie and I met Molly she was in the original kind of big group. And then we met her at XYPN Live and invited her into the group, and she joined, and it's been the 4 of us ever since.
I do remember you guys telling a short little story about how you found Molly at XYPN Live. Does someone want to add some color to that experience, Molly?
As the victim of this, I will definitely add some color to this. But I did want to mention one thing first. I was actually talking to a newer XYPN member about masterminds, and he was asking me, how do you get into a mastermind? And I think the big launcher group is so helpful there, because you're just going to notice people that kind of talk the way that you do and kind of think the way that you do and have the same humor that you do. And I think that it becomes a little bit magnetic in that group setting. And so I'm in a couple of different mastermind groups from that launcher group. But, this one, I think I had walked into the conference. This was XYPN Live in 2019, I think. Yep. And I might have still had my luggage, and I get Bonnie and Adrienne sort of walking toward me, cornering me, and they're like, Molly. And I'm like, I recognize your faces. And that was sort of the beginning and the end of things. It was very, very seamless, but it was really funny that I'm like, who are these people walking? Oh, I recognize their faces. This is weird. I haven't talked to them in a while. And then there was the invite.
Molly, I'm glad you tell that story, because it does remind our listeners that, yes, we can help make some matches for you, but ultimately we can't play God and make the perfect group out of nowhere. It really does take some interaction with one another to understand each other's rapport and style, the way you talk. I love that. To be able to find who really clicks with each other. And it really sounds like you all click. I'm interested in, ultimately this is here to help your business. It sounds like you all have become really good friends on top of it. Molly, I'd be interested in what you know in terms of kind of what does this group and team know about your business, and how does it help you be a better business owner?
I would say it's been really interesting where we've all sort of evolved over time, because we all kind of have something else going on as far as we're starting our business. But for example, Adrienne, I'll not throw you under the bus, but you had a full-time job there for a while. And so we were helping you try to figure out how to start your business while still working full-time, which I have no idea how you did. But then, Adrienne and I sometimes will stay on a little after our Friday call and talk about, we both use Right Capital as our financial planning software. And so we'll really dig into that together. So I don't know if I know, about every detail of every one of our clients, but I think Adrienne and I, maybe we're the closest as far as like where we are in business. And then Becky, it seems like you kind of got up and running a little bit later. And so we're able to give you advice on things that have popped up in our businesses. And so I think it all works really well together. I would say, we don't know each other's clients' names, but we are always available to help each other out.
Great. Adrienne, I'm interested in kind of how does the diversity of this group in terms of your life experiences, the designations you have, the types of firms you're running, how does that benefit you by spending time with people that aren't literally running your business with you?
I think it's a huge benefit, particularly because each person in the group has a slightly different skill set to bring. So Bonnie and Becky both have their own tax business as well. And so they are really helpful when it comes to kind of tax planning questions. Molly, of course, has her CFA, so she's a really great resource when it comes to investment type questions. And, she's very generous with her information and wisdom and experiences in that world. And, Bonnie is also the one among us who has gone out and hired people. So that has been incredibly helpful to hear about and learn about as well. For me, I would say I bring kind of the life planning twist to the group and have some more background with financial counseling as well. So like the differences in thought, I actually actively seek that out because I don't want to just know what I want. I want to know, what other people are doing, how they do it, and what might work to help me get even better.
And it's helpful too because Becky is a CPA. So I'm not a CPA, I'm an enrolled agent. So I do have the tax background, but Becky has that more extensive CPA background. That's helpful. And Molly has a great background in compliance. She knows a lot about compliance. So when we have compliance questions, we definitely go to Molly, I think.
Great. I'm interested. One of the big objections I hear about mastermind groups is, well, I don't want to spend time with people that are behind me or right next to me in terms of growth. I want to be with people who are ahead of me. Molly, how do you deal with that?
Okay. So if I was asked to join a launcher group or a mastermind group that was starting just now, then, there's a sort of give relationship if you're drastically, not drastically ahead, but a couple of years ahead. And so I think that, I don't really hear that pushback. We would all probably love to have somebody that was 10 years in to comfort us, but what would that person get? They would just get questions. They would just be hounded with questions the whole time. So I think it's been really helpful that we're all, I feel, within 6 months of the exact same spot. And I think that just, another thing I was just thinking about this group is that rarely is this talked about, I guess is a good thing, but there's a complete lack of competition amongst us. Like we are just all there to help each other and be supportive of each other. And I think that if we had a brand new person who had just started their business, then they would be kind of taking up all the airtime. Similarly, if we had someone that was 3 years ahead of us, they would just be exhausted because we would be asking all these questions about what's coming next. And ultimately, every single one of these 4 journeys has been different. But we're able to share our stories. And I think it makes us much stronger as business owners and as a group.
Great. I'm wondering, when there's topics that you all talk about that maybe is specific to someone's business, do you ever walk away and feel like, oh, I just didn't get anything out of that meeting? Is that a feeling that you often have?
I never feel that way. I feel like every time we get together, there's always something that comes out of it. The other thing I would say is that being in a successful mastermind group does take patience, right? So we've been talking to each other every single week for almost 2 years, and we didn't know each other at the beginning, right? And we didn't know about each other. So I think patience is a big part of it, and just taking time to get to know each other and being open to different perspectives is a really important piece of it.
Yeah. Molly?
I think that I know Bonnie and I have talked about this and suffered from this too, is that sometimes we don't feel like going. And what's great about this group is there's no judgment if you don't show up. But the other piece is like, usually if we don't feel like going, it definitely means that we need to go, because the accountability of just continuing to meet with a group for 2 years is so important. Because if we don't go, it's probably because there's something we need to talk about. It's like if you've ever had a therapist or a coach, you need to talk to them. If you don't show up, there's usually a reason for that. So, I don't know. I think that the accountability and sticking with each other for this long has just been such a great thing.
Yeah. Bonnie?
I think one of the things that we all 4 have struggled with a lot, and we talk about on occasion and support each other through, is, and this is such a common thing, is imposter syndrome. And it's really important that when you're feeling that way, that you have somebody to lean on that can cheer you on and give you empathy and say, yes, I feel that way too, or I had a circumstance like that as well, and this is what I did, or, just somebody to tell you you're doing great and keep going. Sometimes that's all you need, is that person who's like, you know what, I think you're amazing. And to know that one person on the planet thinks you're amazing, sometimes that's all you need to get through the day, or the hour, or the minute that you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with. So
I'm so glad you say that. one of the major issues a lot of XYPN members face as they launch their firms is that they realize their community of what their former employer provided is no longer there. They don't have the teammates, they don't have the boss, they don't have the water cooler commentary. Becky, how have you adjusted to working solo in light of this group?
Well, I think these ladies have been really awesome to work with. And when you're having that bad day or just want to talk to somebody, we'll just throw a text out there to everybody and see who's around. Sometimes, we're working on a problem and normally you'd have a coworker. You get on the text and say, who can help me? And we hop on a Zoom meeting or something, so it's been really helpful. And I don't feel alone because I know these ladies are out there for me if I need something.
Yeah, great to hear. As I mentioned before, this first 1 and 2 years, they're just hard years. I'm wondering, does anyone have a story of kind of that imposter syndrome and how this group was the lifeline?
All of 2020.
Oh gosh, was that actually a year? Did that just happen? How did 2020 change your group and your relationships?
For me, having the group during 2020 was absolutely critical, just because my 2020, along with everybody else's 2020, didn't exactly go according to plan. There was other things happening and going on, and they were able to kind of help me get through all of that and ultimately get to the point where I could take the leap and quit my job. So definitely had a very significant impact through all of the things that happened.
Molly, how about you?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if everybody else here will agree with me, but we started in the middle of 2019, kind of low expectations. You'll have a lot more expenses than you have clients. We all kind of knew what the second half of 2019 was going to look like, but I'm a big goal person. Now, whether I go back and remember the goals I set out 3 years ago is another thing, but I'm a huge, okay, here's what revenue I want. Here's how many clients I want this year. Here's what I'm going to do to get that. And 2020, starting a business in 2020 was an interesting time to start one. We had to all kind of reevaluate our expectations of what 2020 would look like, but that's specifically why a mastermind group or a study group or a lady group is so important, is that, for those days where we're like, it's been 3 months and I haven't heard from a soul. And I keep putting these blogs out there. I keep putting these things out there and I'm not hearing anything back. What should we do about that? Sometimes it's okay to just realize that 2020 was a really odd and horrible year in a lot of ways. And having a group of people that help fill the silence with laughter and support was incredible.
Bonnie?
Well, and I remember reassuring my mastermind group buddies that, the way we look back on people who became financial planners in 2007, right before the 2008 financial collapse, I'm like, that's going to be us someday. People will be like, you started an RIA in 2019? Ooh, boy, you're like a hero to have survived that. So I think that got me through some hard days when I was like, okay, well, this is the way that it is right now, but people have gotten through it before. And, we'll just be those people that started in 2019. And in the future, people look back and be like, whoa, could you have picked a worse time? No.
Other thoughts on that? Becky?
So like Adrienne, I also quit my job in 2020. It was a little bit scary because then all of a sudden our state was shut down too. So I quit my job and I'm sitting at home now going, oh, what do I do? So I'm glad to see 2020 leave for sure.
Yeah. Understatement
but
for sure.
Ladies have been super helpful because, I get home and I'm like, okay, I'm quitting my job and they're all, very supportive and helping me with good ideas to work on my business. So they were my bright spot.
Great. Early on in a relationship in a mastermind group, trust isn't necessarily there. There's also kind of personality conflicts. I'm wondering, how do you manage that? What kind of energy did you come into this group with that allowed for such a safe space, for difference in growth, for difference in trajectory, for difference of how you literally run your business, to personalities? How do you create a space that is welcoming and non-competitive?
That's a very interesting question, following a very interesting and I don't even know the right word, but 2020 was not just the pandemic. There was a lot of drama going on politically, just in every, aspect of the world and of our lives. And we don't all agree on everything, but I don't know that we've ever fought. I mean, that's what I think, if I can brag on us for a second, I think that we are really good at the conversation you keep hearing in the media and everything that people need to have, the open and welcoming conversation. You're never going to be shunned out of this group for having an opinion that's not the same as everybody else's. So I feel really fortunate for that.
Same here. And feel like we do a really good job of really, and I don't know that we ever explicitly said everybody's entitled to their view, but that is kind of what comes out of the group.
Yeah. I think anytime we are willing to extend our own time to work with people, we grow because of that. And one of the biggest challenges I see for members launching their RIAs is trying to do it alone. And the whole idea behind XY is to be able to do it alone and independently, but with the feeling that you're part of a larger something. And this group is one of those micro communities within the XYPN Launcher community. Bonnie, early on, you've credited XYPN Radio as kind of a inspirational point for you. And it sounds like this group is really becoming that for you now. But could you maybe shed some light on how XYPN Radio opened the door to being open to something like a mastermind group?
Well, I would not have started an RIA myself without XYPN Radio, because I was under the impression that you had to go work for a firm in order to be able to be, sponsored for licensing. I was driving home from a camping trip, and I was listening to an XYPN podcast episode with Alan Moore and Stephen Allred. And he talked about taking a Series 65, and that he started an RIA from scratch. And I didn't know that was an option. And I immediately went home, signed up for Kaplan's Series 65 program, and took the test and launched an RIA. It was just nuts, but I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't know that much, but I knew I didn't want to go into the financial services industry and sell things on commission. I didn't feel good about that. That didn't align with my values. I had originally read about XYPN in the New York Times, and that was the first I had heard about the retainer model. And I was like, that's amazing. I wish I could do that, or I knew somebody that did that. So yeah, the XYPN Radio was certainly critical to my launching my business. And then as far as we talk about in our mastermind group, if we listen to a particularly good podcast episode that we like, that's been, helpful to us, and things we'll recommend it to each other, or any podcast really, or book, or I think in our group text just yesterday, Becky sent us a snapshot of a book that Adrienne had recommended and was like, I love this. Maybe they can talk about that book, but sharing resources is a big part of what we do. Molly's particularly good at it. And that's, again, even in our launcher group, when there was 30 of us in that launcher group. And part of the reason why Adrienne and I approached her about it was because she's so great with resources. And, if you have a question, Molly's going to show you, the resource to find the answer. She's going to give you the article or the book or the podcast that's going to help you answer your question. And she's so generous with that too. So again, she was like that in the launcher group, which is why we approached her and we're like, join our group, be with us, because we saw the benefit that she would bring to us, and hopefully we brought some value to her as well.
Great. Molly, how has this group changed your business?
Well, I think that the largest thing that this group has done for me is that sometimes you have those days where you just decide you want to maybe you want to quit. Like maybe this isn't all worth it. Maybe it's been a really quiet several months, or maybe, you've taken on a client that you expected to go one way and it's not going that way and they're kind of wearing you out. And I think that this group both provides feedback, but also is just there to listen, which is really helpful. And then just to echo Bonnie down there, I think the reason that I am so into sharing resources is two things. And we all do this with each other. But one of the reasons is that I came from a firm that was very private about what made them special. And so XYPN is so opposite of that. It's like, here's what's special about me and let me share it with you so that your business can be better, because competitiveness is important, of course, for anything in life, but not to where it becomes this weird culture of we can't share anything. And let's figure out how to tear down other businesses around us in order for us to look the best. So I think that's part of sharing. But then also, I'll just share this as I'll share a resource here on the podcast. I read a book called Designing Your Life that is and there's a workbook now too. It's become this whole thing. You can go to a conference now. I think two Stanford professors maybe that are engineers and just talked about, if you are looking at your computer screen, you have to remember somebody designed that computer screen. And so that kind of just opened my mind to all we're designing these businesses that don't exist yet, and so 10 years from now, we'll look back and say, here's how we built these things. But reading that just got me into just becoming obsessed with information. I'm a very obsessive Googler in all ways of my life, but I think that that Designing Your Life is a really good resource for anyone who might be listening that wonders if they can leave their company or wonders, what life would look like on the other side. You can actually design that, design what's most ideal, look at the things that fill you up and the things that drain you within your current job. And so I think that, I know that's not the question you asked, but I just wanted to pipe in and say that.
Beautiful. I was just looking at my bookshelf for that book. I do recall reading it. What a great resource, Molly. And it's those kind of conversations that I can hear in the group already happening, or as if I was part of that group, the way you can just easily share, hey, I read this article, it was a pick me up. It's that kind of stream of support that I would find particularly helpful in the businesses you all are in. Adrienne, what really stands out over the past 2 years as being a pivotal point of support for this group that they provided to you?
Well, there were a lot, so it's hard to answer. I would say one of the biggest hurdles was leaving the security of the day job. And there's a lot kind of around that. And they were instrumental in helping me do that. In fact, there were little things like, okay, we're going to put it on the calendar. Bonnie is like, we're writing it on the calendar and we're double underlining it. And then I had to ask for an extension and we moved the date and triple underlined it. And as I was trying to actually, write the letter and do the deed, they were there along the way. So
Wow. How wonderful. Becky, has this group done any retreats or any intentional kind of gathering to talk about the group and the format and the structure itself, or is it all just coming naturally?
So we actually planned on doing something this summer, but it's not going to happen. We're going to go all up to the San Juan Islands and rent a house and just talk about our businesses and hang out. And so I think it's something that we'll definitely plan in the future when we can all get together.
Yeah, wonderful. Bonnie, do you have any interest in putting more structure around this group, making sure there's a mission statement involved, there's a written commitment that we've all signed the dotted line, that we're not going to show up and be assholes? Like, what are you committing to each other, or is it just kind of this unsaid commitment?
Oh, it's so funny that you asked me. Everybody's laughing in the group because they're like, you're asking me if we should have more structure? No, of course not. No, this is perfect. In fact, I'm the last person that wants structure. I don't know if you've ever read Gretchen Rubin's 4 Tendencies, but I'm a rebel. And so I don't respond to external or internal expectations.
Ooh.
So I have to want to do something. So if I would imagine if Becky and Adrienne and Molly wanted to like put together a code of conduct, I'd be like, you three have a great time. And I will, adhere to whatever you want to do, but, maybe, but no, I think it's worked really well for us, not to have so much structure, because it allows for the flexibility of individual needs being met on any given week or given day. I remember one time early on, we got together in an evening Zoom call to work on Smart RIA together. And we have talked about getting together at the beginning of January in 2022 to work on our ADVs together, because I always am late, rebel. So with getting my ADV work done, and I have a tax business. So I end up working on it in March during tax season, and it's excruciating. So I talked to Molly about it, and she was like, yeah, let's get together like the first week of January and just do our ADVs together. And whether we do it by Zoom or in person, we'll see. But it's that kind of support. And also the not having a structure, again, allows us to be flexible for whatever anybody needs at any given time.
I think this is such a good example for our listeners to remember that the group can really turn into anything you want it to turn into. And those of us who work in a group like this, we're lucky to end up calling everyone dear friends at the end. But even if you were to keep it structured and keep it totally focused on the business, 90 minutes, open, closed, that too can still be really effective for the people that works for. And what I really sense here is that all of you have found kind of that perfect balance and that middle ground for what works for you. Molly, what do you see as the future of this group?
That's a big question. I would imagine that, once everybody's vaccinated and we're all back to normal, that maybe even a couple retreats a year, I would imagine we're probably all going to figure out a cool place to stay whenever there's XYPN Live. I think that I don't foresee a big change. I mean, I think that our businesses are going to continue to grow in similar ways. Interestingly, we all kind of have little side hustle things that we're doing or have had. So obviously we mentioned Becky and Bonnie have tax. I'm doing a little moonlighting and helping with student loan planners. So I'm doing some student loans. So I think we'll all just do these experiments where we try things and see if they work, see if they don't. But I mean, I can imagine us all, 10 years from now being on our umpteenth retreat and just, it's funny that, as far as structure goes, this all kind of goes together. I would imagine our retreat would be 90% not talking about work. And then eventually, because we do this on our Friday calls too, being like, hey, I just have one thing that's actually business related. Can we talk about that real quick? So sort of interrupting the group to say, hey, real quick. So this might be, I'm envisioning like maybe a Saturday morning. We're like, hey, can we spend 1 hour talking about our businesses? And then, we'll go out on a lake or something like that. But I mean, I don't envision this group going away at all. I know some masterminds do kind of fizzle out. And I think it's just a matter of, are you going to show up or not? And if you're not going to continue to show up, then a group's going to fizzle. But the four of us have been really strong and have shown up almost every week. So
that brings tears to my eyes, Molly. I really do love a community that can be life-changing, because we see it happen all the time. Adrienne, any thoughts on the future of this group and where you're going with it?
Similar to Molly, I think that, the beauty of this group is that it's flexible and dynamic. And so, no, we don't always focus 100% on the business piece of things, but as we grow and take on new things, we're going to revisit all of those struggles and pain points of the initial launch, right? So there are things that we all plan to do in the next couple of years. And every time you step outside of your comfort zone and you take on something new, it's a whole new learning curve and, a whole new experience and personal growth and all of that good stuff. And so I just see this continuing to deepen and build those connections and have those shared experiences through time.
Bonnie?
Yeah. And the thing about being an entrepreneur is it's a lonely gig, right? Because even, you're an island effectively, because you're building this business, and nobody, even your spouse or your partner or whatever, can't share that with you. And so the biggest benefit, I think, from the mastermind group is that we're able to take that lonely experience and share it so that it's not so lonely. Even though we're still our own business owners and doing our own thing, I know that Adrienne is lonely and doing it herself too, and maybe has lonely days, or Molly or Becky, that it's nice to have people who are doing the thing that you're doing at the same time, even though you're not necessarily doing it together, because it becomes a very shared experience and less lonely.
Molly, I think you mentioned that everyone's got side hustles. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. Anyone want to share what they're side hustling?
I can share mine. I actually just started this year. I'm in a student loan group. So I think at my peak, I was in 6 different masterminds. I think now I'm down to like 3 or 4, depending upon how many have evolved or devolved over time. This is the one that's most regular for sure. But I was in a student loan group, and Travis, who's the founder of Student Loan Planner, came to our group and went through basically a consult, what Student Loan Planner does, a student loan situation, over an hour. And I was just amazed. So I became a fan first, and signed up for the emails and everything. I applied for it, and I happened to get the gig. So I'm able to help people, who are facing 6 figures of student loan debt, which I was as well. So that's what really inspired me to do it. It's a really, really flexible sort of side gig. I also have a little creative business with my sister where we bake and do calligraphy and things like that. So I need a very varied life, as far as I'm not a 9-to-5er for sure. And that was part of the designing your life process for me. And so it's been really fun to make my own schedule in that way. But I know that either Becky or Bonnie could share that maybe they're not as happy-go-lucky about the balance from maybe January to April as I might be because of the tax world.
Yeah. Becky?
So Bonnie and I met when we were still in the launcher group, and because we're so close in geographically. So she was talking to me about her tax business that she's been doing, and was like, oh, you really should do that as well, because you'll see benefits of tax clients being financial planning clients. So she was really the one that pushed me to also start a tax business. So I work with individuals and small businesses on preparing taxes.
Beautiful. Adrienne, what's your side hustle?
Well, I gave up my side hustle on January 31st. Woo-woo.
Yay!
And yeah, so now it's just the business, which is pretty awesome.
Wonderful. Bonnie, go ahead.
Yeah, my side hustle is more like my main hustle at this point, which is the tax business. I was planning to start a tax business for years before I decided to start an RIA, but I knew I wanted both. I actually looked on the XYPN website and found an advisor that also had a tax business, and I contacted her, Wendy Hubbard in Phoenix, Arizona. She has a business called Tax Shark, and she's a financial planner as well. So I actually consulted with her prior to launching either business. And I said, which one should I start first? I've passed my Series 65. Should I start financial planning first, or should I start tax first? And she said, start tax first, because it'll be easier to get clients, and you can build some, financial planning is a little more slow growing. And so I started the tax business a year before I started the financial planning business. And it has been, and again, I took the concepts from XYPN, promoting niche, you got a niche. So I did that with my tax business. And I said, I am a tax person and financial planner, the therapist, and I have lots of other clients who do other things, but it's caused explosive growth in my tax business. And the tax business is like becoming this, overtaking my life, especially on May 5th when the tax deadline is May 17th. But I would say I'm actually going to have to make some changes to my financial planning business model because the tax business is getting so big. And again, I texted the group and was like, hey, I'm thinking about making some changes. And they immediately sent me like all this feedback. And I was like, should we talk about it on Friday, or do you want to give feedback now? And they were like, here's a bunch of feedback and we'll talk about it on Friday. So I'm looking forward to making some changes to the financial planning business model. They're going to work better for me and for my clients. And this group will help me do that, which is fantastic. Wow. And I'm so grateful to them for that. So my side hustle is not really a side hustle. It's kind of the main event at this point.
Yeah, wonderful. What great evidence of how a group can be powerful for individual planners like yourself. Molly?
I just wanted to note, it's just another little anecdote that I am horrible about leaving my phone in other rooms, or I'm on a different time zone. So sometimes I'll come to my phone and I'll have like 47 missed text messages. So Bonnie was just talking about reaching out. I mean, it becomes a storm of just ideas, support. And if you miss one, then you've got a lot of reading to catch up on.
Totally. I do want to ask for a little bit of a story as we round out this conversation. Bonnie, I know that you've been personally supported by this group in more ways than one. Would you mind letting the listeners know about an impactful relationship that proved to be very, very helpful for you recently?
Oh, this just melts my heart when I tell this story. And poor Adrienne, she's probably going to cringe. But back in September, we had those terrible fires in Oregon. And I was in the evacuation zone. It was a 3-level evacuation, and I was in level 1. So it was sort of like, you might want to leave. And in that group, I think it was in the group text, Adrienne said, you can evacuate to my place in Spokane. So I think I called her, I texted her back and was like, did you mean it? And she was like, I wouldn't offer if I didn't mean it. And I also consulted with her prior to leaving, about evacuating and what that looked like and whether I should. Is it a good time to evacuate? Is it a bad time to evacuate? She had previously had to evacuate for a hurricane and advised me that if you wait until the level gets higher for evacuation, you might get just stuck in traffic, which I didn't want to do. So I packed up my teenage sons and we drove to Spokane to Adrienne's house in the middle of a pandemic too, mind you. So, and they welcomed us, she and her husband, Thomas, who was a lovely person, and her son, Sam, they welcomed us with open arms, fed us. And Adrienne said that the price for taking in an evacuees would be that I had to be a guest on her and Thomas's podcast for evacuation preparation. Adrienne and Thomas have a podcast called Between the Fire and the Grind. This is where Adrienne will really start to cringe. So please tune in to Between the Fire and the Grind. So we did a podcast episode, while I was evacuated at Adrienne's house, and my husband called in because he was still here in Oregon working. And we did what about evacuation and what it was like and what we took and what we didn't take and, what we might do different, what Thomas and Adrienne had their experience about evacuation. September is disaster preparedness month. So it actually all aligned perfectly that I should do that podcast with her. So I think it's episode 9, Between the Fire and the Grind, if you want to hear us talk about evacuating. It was a fun episode. But I was so grateful to Adrienne that she took us in. I think we stayed up there for a few days. And then once things started to get better down here, then we came back. And and I also emailed Cassie about that. And Adrienne was voted the most supportive financial planner in XYPN in 2020. And I don't know if that was part of it, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that it was. Taking in evacuees is way above and beyond. But if you're in a mastermind group and you need to evacuate, maybe one of your mastermind group members will take you in.
Totally. What an incredible story. I often use the carrot for folks to join a mastermind group to possibly get some friends out of it. But this is a new example. Molly?
I would also add that while Bonnie, I don't know if you remember this, but while you were driving to Adrienne's house and stopping to get fast food on the way for the boys because they were hungry, you were helping me with a situation that was not work related, but you were on the phone with me the whole time on the way to Adrienne's to talk about a situation, even though you were incredibly busy and had other things on your mind. So I'll just pipe in. I was part of that story too.
Incredible. Ladies, if you can believe it, we are rounding out this episode, but I don't want to end before I ask each of you for a couple tips for our listeners. Knowing that some of our listeners have not yet launched their firms, maybe doing it alone is what is scaring them. Any final thoughts for what a mastermind group, study group, lady group, other group could mean for that adventure? I'd be interested. Molly, I'll let you go first.
I would say find a couple things or acknowledge a couple things that are true of yourself, and then don't settle for a group that doesn't appeal to those things. So I think that, I'm an almost overly competitive person where if I was in a group that was all about numbers and making everybody better by this amount of time, then that would I would think it was right. But it wouldn't be the right fit. And if you sort of dread going to your mastermind every week, then find another one. I mean, there's a lot of members within XYPN, and I think that, you'll find the right group. You just have to be a little bit patient to find it. And then as far as when I first started my business, I wanted everybody to quit their job and start their business. And so I think that, find cheerleaders and then actually do the work. So whether it's that designing your life book or just, start tracking your spending for how much you need to have set aside. I mean, it's not impossible to start a business. I am shocked at how well it's gone. And if you'd asked me that a year ago, I wouldn't have the same answer, but you just got to figure out your numbers, start the business, realize it's going to be about 1.5 years of, oh crap, what did I do? But things will turn around. If you treat your clients well, if you've got a good personality and you're willing to listen, then your business is going to work out.
Great advice. Becky, how about you?
Well, I think we were pretty lucky in finding this group right at the beginning, but I would definitely recommend that if you don't find the right one in the beginning, to keep looking, because having the support has been really beneficial to me, and I think all the ladies here. And I've been in some other groups and I'm like, I don't really feel like this is the greatest spot for me. And where you kind of wonder if you're wasting your time. If you're feeling that way, just keep looking.
Really good advice. Bonnie, how about you?
Like Becky said, I feel really fortunate that we got involved. I got involved with this group really early on. I joined XYPN in March of 2019, and the launcher group was in May 2019, and then this group started in June of 2019. So I haven't been without the mastermind group really, but even if I didn't have this group, XYPN has so many resources to help you and support you. But I almost feel like there's just no way to take advantage of all the resources that XYPN has available to me. So I've focused my energy on this group because it works really well for me, and it's helped me, and it's there for me when I need it. I haven't needed a lot of those other resources that XYPN provides because of that, though I think my mastermind group members have utilized a lot of them, and then they pass them on to me when I need them, which is awesome. So I don't think anybody, if you're interested in starting an RIA, I think joining XYPN, if you don't want to be alone, you're not going to be alone with XYPN. And you will be able to find, I saw lots of people, especially at XYPN Live in 2019. 2020 didn't happen. I don't remember why, but lots of people meet each other at XYPN Live. They could put together groups. We met other people that we could potentially add to this group or start another group. And you can see that synergy happening at the conference too. And you don't have to be an XYPN member to go to the conference. So you can meet all kinds of people that are your people at the conference that you could then turn into a mastermind group. So, and there's member forums on XYPN. I just can't say enough great things about all of the support that I've been provided. And I've never felt like I've been on my own. I've never felt alone.
Love that. Adrienne, I'll let you be the final voice of this podcast. What are your thoughts?
So taking the leap is uncomfortable. Early on, Bonnie and I had a call and we were talking about just how uncomfortable it all is. And we actually gave ourselves permission to feel uncomfortable and set an end date for it where we would meet up again and assess and evaluate how uncomfortable we were. So if you're ready to take that leap, ready to launch your firm and go out there, and you've got XYPN and your group around you to support you, maybe the last piece is just acknowledge that it's going to be uncomfortable, but that's okay.
Yeah, really good advice. Ladies, this has been an incredible interview. I so appreciate all of your energy, your commitment to each other, to your clients, to this industry, and what the work you're doing. I really hope this is great evidence to our listeners that when you do break out on your own, there is more than enough folks to call your colleagues and friends here at XYPN and outside of the community. Thank you all so much for being on this show, and maybe we'll have an annual check-in with this group in the future. Thank you each so much.
Thanks, Maddie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maddie.
Bye.
Avocado toast, selfies, a mountain of student loan debt. Gen Y is anything but traditional, and with over 75 million people, it's a population you don't want to ignore. Learn more about how to serve this unique population in our guide called Attract and Profitably Serve Millennial Clients in Your RIA. Discover 3 key ways to tap into the millennial market and 6 things that they want from their financial advisor. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/millennials for your free copy. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes, and finally, to find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You are not alone, and you are not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm, and that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.